Hello, it's Wednesday, March 7th. I'm Chris Johnson, and this is The Forgotten Right. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the West Virginia teachers' raises that they finally did receive this week and are finally back to work. Another nor'easter for the East Coast. Democrats unveiling a $1 trillion spending bill. Donald Trump, and more Donald Trump, and a little bit more Donald Trump and some porn star and Donald Trump. How the Democrats and Hillary Clinton's email server is just not going away. And finally, how YouTube is being sued by a former HR employee because of their hiring practices. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's start off with the West Virginia raises for those teachers. Finally, after an 8-day strike, the West Virginia school teachers are back to work, and they have received their 1% difference in the Senate and the House for the state there. The Senate and the governor agreed to a 5% raise for those school teachers, and the House in the state of West Virginia only wanted to give them 4%. So the school teachers decided to take 8 days off and not educate our students there in the great state of West Virginia. If you're tuned in tonight and you want to join in on the chat, go ahead and do that on the right side. And you can also subscribe to this channel so that you know when I go live every Wednesday and Sunday. So something that I think is absolutely, that's ridiculous. All over a 1% pay difference, you're going to ruin some kids' educations. But again, what do I know about all this stuff? Oh, there's a big nor'easter that's getting ready to hit the East Coast. They've already had snow. It started to fall tonight, but they're looking at another 10 to 12 inches over the East Coast. Amtrak trains have started to divert. And just overall melee and craziness going on throughout the East Coast, from Maine down south through New York City into Boston. So if you're out there, hearing our thoughts and our prayers, and I wish I owned a shovel company to be selling snow shovels right now. But moving into the land of politics, like I already talked about, the Democrats are set to unveil a $1 trillion infrastructure plan and seek the reversal of GOP tax cuts to finance this. As you can see there on the Washington Post's article, the great Chuck Schumer, Democrat from the state of New York, is bringing this all out. The great thing about all this is that even Chuck Schumer has said that he doesn't believe this is going to pass. Again, wasted time in politics, and I don't disagree with all the potholes in and around where I drive, that there's some major infrastructure that needs to be changed and fixed. But I don't see how you're going to reverse the GOP tax cuts to be able to do that after everybody's gotten raises and bonuses this year. There's something else that needs to give. Whatever that be, I'm glad that I'm not an elected politician and I'm just a guy that's on YouTube to talk about it with you. So, moving on. Donald Trump is suing the state of California over interference with immigration enforcement. This is due to those sanctuary cities like San Francisco and Oakland that are fighting the Trump administration and denying information between agencies in the state and federal they're not giving any information between agencies to protect these illegal immigrants, saying that they are helping the economy. Now, I think that we can all agree that they probably do help the economy, especially in the state of California and the agriculture that is out there. But there are ways around all this. And if you were here in the United States, how about you become a citizen of this great country? It's an awesome place, and we welcome you here legally. So let's do it the legal way and become a citizen. More of Donald Trump, and now a porn star, Stormy Daniels. I don't recommend you looking her up on the internet, especially if you're at work, because you're going to see some things that maybe you don't want to see, and you really don't want human resources to see if you're at work. But she's suing Donald Trump, saying that a hush agreement that was agreed upon Donald Trump's aides and her over some sexual things that her and Donald Trump did before he was president is invalid because the president didn't sign that agreement. The problem is what's being reported by NBC and many other news outlets is that she took money in all of this. So I guess her hands are dirty. I don't know how they could be much dirtier than being a porn star. But I mean, you're taking money and you have a gag order. Probably don't need to be talking about things. It sounds like she's probably a washed up old porn star who is losing everything and wants to stay in the limelight. So she's doing everything that she possibly can to stay relevant. And this is her, I guess, 15 minutes of fame, if you want to call it that. Moving on, Donald Trump is set to release tariffs on steel and aluminum. And this is, I guess, a good thing and a bad thing for, as many people are talking about, that a 10% tariff on aluminum and 15 to 20% on steel. I think that this is a great idea, but I also think it's a bad idea. And I see it twofold here, that the United States manufacturing is really going to be helped by this. But until our manufacturing is back up to speed in places like Pittsburgh and Gary, Indiana, making steel and metals, that our prices are going to inflate if this does go through, until we can get those all put into order. But I do think that this is a great idea. This is going to help American manufacturing. And also, Donald Trump has spoken with the prime ministers of Canada and Mexico in regards to this, and said if they will renegotiate NAFTA, which was originally put into place by Bill Clinton, that he would look at removing those tariffs as long as the NAFTA trade agreement was fair for the United States, which I think that we can all agree is a great thing, making America great again, and also helping those forgotten people in manufacturing that have lost everything. Personally, I've been up into Gary, and I remember going up there when I was a kid, and it being it was always pretty rough, but people were working. Now you go up there and nobody's working. You have beggars. At one time was the murder capital of the United States. That is now moved, but just about one city away to Chicago. Gary actually touches Chicago, so I don't think that there's been much of a change there. But going along with those sanctions and tariffs has brought the rocket man, Kim Jong-un, to the tables to try to do some negotiations with the United States because of some of those tariffs. This is a great thing, but as we've all seen in times past, North Korea is just out to play games. I've seen people talking about how they believe that this is actually this Kim Jong-un talking about trying to gain more nuclear strength for his small hermit community. Hermit country. And that's something that we definitely do not need. No matter how weak they might be, they definitely do not need a nuclear weapon. And something that could strike the United States mainland or even just Hawaii. We don't want that anywhere near our country. And we have to be able to defend that. So it's always a good thing to be able to talk about things, but in the realization that these talks aren't going to go far. So going along with what we were talking about earlier, and Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton is again in the news and some of her aides, talking about how some of her aides ignored the hack of her server with the consent of Barack Obama. There's absolutely no surprise, at least to myself, in this story at all. If you've been following this from day one in the email server, first of all, why do you have a server that has sensitive government information within your own home? Why is it unsecured? Why is it hackable? And then, once it was hacked, why was everything destroyed? And if you can tell me why, I'm guessing that, first of all, you're going to know a lot more than I do. And second of all, you're probably going to be indicted on something or murdered by Hillary. But, but why? And then now we have a president involved in all that, trying to protect the election for somebody that wasn't elected. Luckily, that we didn't get her as our president. I think many that are tuned into this stream can agree to that. And if you can't, you're probably not watching the right YouTube video. There's some others out there for you, the precious snowflake. But to have a private email server is something that government officials, especially the Secretary of State, which she was at the time, should not be doing. And finally, for tonight, talking about YouTube, which we're on right now, but a former YouTube recruiter is currently suing them for discrimination. And this all goes to that they're discriminating against Caucasian and Asian men trying to hire women and minorities outside the Asian race because they needed more of that type of person. They weren't looking for the best person for the job. They were looking for the person with the right color for the job, I guess. And when you do that, I think that your company is bound to fail. I understand that there is equal opportunity employment. Everybody should have an equal opportunity, and that's why things need to change. I think one start that we could do is by simply what I did when I did hiring in the past. I didn't look at the first name of the person. I just looked at the skills, and that's how I weeded out the first round. I would go through and actually take out the applications that didn't work for me. And I think that always worked really, really well because you got better candidates that way. Not looking at the color or creed of somebody, but looking at their skills first and then moving on from there and finding the best candidate for your company. So that ends today's live broadcast of The Forgotten Right. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to go to our website, forgottenright.com, where you can also find notes from today's show and the links to all the stories that I talked about today. If you need to reach out to me, you can do so through our Facebook page or also through Twitter, which you can see the names right here at the bottom of the screen, facebook.com/forgottenright, or on Twitter @forgotright, because somebody took the name Forgotten Right, and I guess that we can't have it. So we can't all have nice things, so Forgot Right is our Twitter handle, and we look forward to having you as one of our followers there. Also here on Twitter, I got Twitter on the mind, but here on YouTube, we would appreciate you giving us a like and subscribing to us today. We thank you for tuning in. I'm Chris Johnson, and I'll see you this Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, as we talk about the politics and news that happens between now and then. And in between then, make sure you follow us on our social media channels. This has been The Forgotten Right.